It's dark and incredibly cold. There's no oxygen, there's no water, there's no life. But the James Webb Space Telescope doesn't seem bothered by all this. Its main goal is to find the very first galaxies that formed billions of years ago in the early universe and observe the stars making up distant planetary systems. Its mission is to… but wait, what is that? The James Webb Space Telescope has discovered something absolutely amazing, a star-planet hybrid with very strange clouds. This bizarre world, called VHS 1256b, is actually a brown dwarf. Those are bigger than planets, but too small to classify as stars. They emit some light of their own and are quite hot, but their mass is simply not enough to fuse hydrogen into helium, like full-fledged stars do. Space bodies of this kind aren't actually brown. They occur in a wide variety of colors, but those are mostly invisible to the human eye. What we can see is the light they emit, and to us, it appears to be dark orange or magenta. The brown dwarf we're talking about is almost 20 times the size of Jupiter. It orbits 2 red dwarf stars. And to complete one orbit, the brown dwarf needs 17,000 years. In fact, astronomers found out about this unusual exoplanet in 2016. But at that time, they didn't classify it as a brown dwarf, and thus couldn't explain its puzzling reddish glow. Now, thanks to the James Webb Telescope, they know the space object's origin. Anyway, back to those clouds. As you know, clouds on Earth are made of water vapor, but those on the brown dwarf are different. They seem to be made of sand. It looks like good old sand from Earth, but it's actually not. The clouds are made of tiny particles of silicate. Scientists have been putting forward theories about the existence of such sand clouds on exoplanets for quite some time. But the discovery the James Webb Space Telescope made is the first real proof. The silicate particles on the sandy dwarf are most likely quartz or some other mineral. In size, they're less than a micron, and 1 micron is 1/25 of a thousandth of an inch. In other words, they look like particles in smog. The exoplanet seems to have an atmosphere which contains some water, methane, and other substances and minerals. Interestingly, this atmosphere isn't still. It's constantly undergoing extreme changes. Another cool thing about it, scientists have detected carbon dioxide. And this is only the second confirmed discovery of this gas on a planet outside of the solar system. By the way, the James Webb Space Telescope, with the help of which astronomers discovered our sandy brown dwarf, is an absolutely stunning piece of equipment, around 100 times more powerful than Hubble. Even though the telescope itself is 3 stories high and its size equals that of a tennis court, its mirrors are the lightest large telescope mirrors of all time. When all the 18 mirrors of the telescope were completed during the manufacturing process, their mass was reduced by 92% in comparison to the initial discs. Each mirror weighed a mere 44 liyabas. The telescope's mirrors seem to be gold, but in reality, they're made of beryllium, steel gray, lightweight, and brittle metal. There's indeed a gold coating on each mirror. But they can't be produced entirely out of gold, since this material tends to expand and contract even with small temperature changes. That's why the total amount of gold in the James Webb Space Telescope is less than 2 ounces. James Webb's telescope side is cooling itself down, and its temperature doesn't rise higher than 370 F. That's cool enough to make nitrogen liquid. A truly enormous 5-layered sun shield stretches around the telescope and reflects away as much sunlight as possible, letting the telescope stay cool. The telescope was launched near the equator because Earth spins a bit faster there, and this gave the rocket some extra push. The telescope orbits the Sun more than 1 million miles away from Earth, and when it runs out of fuel, it'll keep orbiting the Sun indefinitely. On the other hand, even though the telescope wasn't actually designed to be serviced or upgraded, it might potentially be refueled with the help of robots. This would extend its life. Anyway, if you think that our newly found brown dwarf is the only bizarre exoplanet out there, let me show you some other breathtaking worlds. There is an exoplanet that is really something else. Just look at its awesome magenta color. You can find it in the Virgo constellation. The planet is called Gliese 504b. It orbits very far from its parent star, 9 times the distance between the Sun and Jupiter. The planet formed relatively recently and is still glowing with heat. That's why its surface looks pinkish. One of the oldest exoplanets we know about, PSR BC 20-26b, is about 12.7 billion years old. It's almost 3 times as old as Earth. This also means that the so-called Genesis planet formed only about 1 billion years after the Big Bang. The planet is so old that its 2 parent stars have had enough time to evolve into a white dwarf and a pulsar making almost 100 revolutions per second. I bet sunrises on this planet must look awesome. Just 20 light years away from the Sun, which isn't such a great distance when we talk about space. A bizarre rogue planet is roaming the Milky Way galaxy. But even though this planet doesn't orbit any star, it still has an incredibly powerful magnetic field. It's 4 million times stronger than Earth's. The exoplanet also produces amazing auroras. That's why when it was discovered in 2016, astronomers were almost sure they had detected a brown dwarf. But later, scientists got some proof that this space object wasn't big enough to be a brown dwarf. The planet sure is a mammoth among its peers. It's 1.2 times as wide as the largest planet in the solar system, Jupiter, and more than 12 times as heavy. Astronomers think the exceptionally strong magnetic field helps the planet produce auroras. But the most curious thing is that they're generated in a different way than auroras on Earth. It might be because the exoplanet's moon helps the planet create mesmerizing light shows. The next exoplanet isn't like any other. It's often called Super Saturn or Saturn on steroids. That's because J147b has a colossal system of rings. They're 640 times as large as those our Saturn has. This bizarre world is the only planet we know about that has rings similar to Saturn's. If you moved this giant to our solar system and used it to replace Saturn, its rings would look many times larger than a full moon. An exoplanet called WASP-12b munches on the light coming from its star. It's one of the darkest worlds people know about, all because its day side consumes light rather than reflects it back into space. The egg-shaped planet is giant, twice the size of Jupiter, and it traps more than 94% of the light that reaches its atmosphere. It might be the main reason for the temperatures on the surface of the planet that can rise up to 4,600 staff. The night side of the planet isn't as hot as its day side, a mere 2,200 giraffe. The difference in temperature makes water vapor and clouds gather above the surface of the planet, and from time to time, swirls of material from the planet's superheated atmosphere spill onto its star. What a view! Discovered in 2017, Kelt 9b is one of the hottest exoplanets we know of. The temperatures there can reach 7,800 AOS. For comparison, the temperatures at the surface of the Sun reach 10,000. The planet is probably so insanely hot because it orbits extremely close to its star, Kelt 9, which is way hotter and bigger than our Sun. Experts believe that the giant star might one day evaporate the entire planet.
It's a clear night, and you're outside looking at the stars. The Milky Way alone seems overwhelmingly huge. You check on your phone and discover that the galaxy you're in at this exact moment is 100,000 light-years wide. For scale, 1 light-year is already a very long distance. For example, it takes 4.2 light-years to go from Earth to Proxima Centauri, which is the closest star to our planet other than the Sun. So, 100,000 light-years is way more than we normal humans can fathom. And that's just one galaxy. There's a whole lot more out there. Now, looking at this data, it seems pretty unlikely that we're the only life form out there, doesn't it? But how come we've never found anything else so far? Let's get one thing out of the way. Extraterrestrial life doesn't necessarily mean we're talking about little green people. It can also mean microorganisms, bacteria, and plants that can be found on other planets. The truth is, there's a big spectrum of possibilities for life on another planet. And taking into consideration that there are up to 50 billion planets in the Milky Way, it's very unlikely that we're alone in this big wide universe. And what does life on other planets look like? This is what we've spent years trying to figure out. Go ahead, think with me. A planet may be lifeless today, but it could have traces of organic matter or fossils, meaning that some life form was able to thrive there once. And it could also be that there are planets out there containing life with complex biochemistry, meaning they could have fauna just like we have on Earth, although probably not the same. NASA created a special science that is dedicated to studying life forms outside of Earth. It's called astrobiology. Ever since the space agency was created back in 1958, it didn't take long for it to start looking for extraterrestrial life. They quickly built an action plan. First, they needed to understand how life on Earth was formed, and secondly, how it could have formed on other planets. The first time NASA tried to look for life in outer space was in 1976. The Viking lander blasted into space, headed towards Mars. There were high expectations that humanity would find the first proof of extraterrestrial life. Unfortunately, the lander came back with images of a planet that looked barren and bleak, and scientists were extremely disappointed. Scientific conclusions on whether life could be detected over there were confusing. But hey, you need to know what you're looking for to find it, right? The failure of the Viking mission served to heat up debates amongst NASA scientists to define what life actually meant. And it also served to call their attention to a small but very important detail. Spacecrafts departing from Earth usually transport Earthling microorganisms and bacteria unintentionally, as they remain attached to the vehicle. It turned out that these bacteria could contaminate scientists' samples, so they needed to consider this. All of this made Mars expeditions take a back burner on NASA's short-term plans. There appeared a new priority-first question. What are the types and stages of life that space programs can hope to identify? Scientists might have encountered life on other planets, but they weren't able to identify it as life. That is why NASA began to study our own planet better. They studied everything, from ancient life forms that lived billions of years ago to living creatures that roam the planet today. They understood that the search needed to happen inwards as well as outwards. Let's take a look at the development of Earth's life from its inception. Imagine that this development can be represented as a ladder, or stairs, and each developmental stage is a flight of the bigger staircase. First, we would see basic chemistry, a soup of loose chemical elements like the ones we see in the periodic table. But they need to assemble themselves into more complex structures to be able to self-replicate, change, and evolve. This would happen in the second step, where we start to see the formation of microscopic organisms. In the third step, these cells combine to become multicellular beings, allowing for more complexity and variety. The step above sees species that can evolve big brains, enabling the use of tools, culture, and shared knowledge. that's where humanity is located. Looking at this ladder, one might ask, so what does it take for a multicellular organism to evolve into fully formed humans? This is what is called the Great Filter. It's a huge evolutionary jump that takes a lot of effort and the perfect environmental conditions for it to happen. And given that we haven't heard of any other extraterrestrial civilizations out there, it might be that we are the only ones that were able to make this jump. After all, how likely is it that we'll find life outside of Earth that is similar to us? That depends on how many planets there are out there in their star's Goldilocks zone, the area around a star where water can be liquid. And because stars come in all sizes and configurations, this zone is different for every star system. But that's not the only criteria we know for the existence of life. We usually look for three things to detect life: liquid water, methane, and oxygen. Water is what allows for chemical components to mingle and connect, forming multicellular beings. Methane is produced by the decomposition process made by bacteria, and oxygen is the byproduct of plant respiration. These are some of the telltale signs that the James Webb Telescope was programmed to search for. The James Webb Telescope has ambitious purposes that might revolutionize space science. Its top priorities are to detect forms of life by studying small galaxies orbiting the Milky Way. It will also look for the oldest stars in the universe, trying to gather data on the origin of the universe itself. That's huge! NASA is betting on two variables with this new telescope: a thorough scan on the so-called exoplanets, aka planets from outside our solar system, and the search for extremophiles, a type of life that loves extreme environments. Extremophiles were first discovered on planet Earth back in the 1960s at the bottom of the sea near the Galapagos Islands. Scientists found microorganisms living next to hydrothermal vents that dot the sea floor over that part of the world. Thriving in places like these with extreme temperatures over 700 degrees Fahrenheit takes a lot of resistance. I mean, can you imagine the heat? This discovery was a turning point for the field of astrobiology, as scientists understood that life could survive in extremely harsh conditions, similar to the atmosphere available in several exoplanets. But hey, life might turn up in our own neighborhood if we're lucky enough. Guided by the mantra, "Follow the water," NASA is launching two important missions inside our solar system that can contribute largely to the search for extraterrestrial life. You remember Jupiter, right? It's the gas giant that has a moon known as Europa. A few years ago, scientists discovered that Europa had an ocean hidden behind layers of icy crust. And there's even more. According to research, the water over in Europa is salty, much like the water we have on our planet. Europa is a big contender for the detection of life. But the Europa Clipper mission is not aimed at trying to identify this. Rather, it will orbit the moon and gather as much information about its atmospheric conditions as it can. The other moon-bound mission is the Dragonfly, an octocopter that will explore Saturn's moon, Titan. The launch is programmed for 2027 and will only arrive in Titan's orbit around 2034. It will sample and examine a series of promising sites around Saturn's icy moon. And who knows, find some new information on ET life? Let's see what happens. But I'd say we've never been closer to a huge discovery than we are now.
Imagine this. Long ago, in the depths of prehistory, aliens visited Earth. Yep, that's right. According to ancient astronaut believers, intelligent extraterrestrial beings made contact with humans thousands of years ago. And not only that, those alien visitors influenced the development of our cultures, religions, technologies, and maybe even our biology. All those divine beings in many ancient religions? Well, some say they were actually aliens with fancy tech, mistaken for deities by early humans. The pyramids, Stonehenge, Easter Island statues, all alien handiwork. At least that's what they claim. Ancient astronaut believers often claim that humans are either descendants or creations of those extraterrestrials. Aliens supposedly came down from the skies and kick-started our civilization. To back up their theories, these believers point to so-called out-of-place artifacts. They take ancient artwork, legends, or even unusual archaeological finds and say, look, that's proof of alien contact. Mainstream historians and archaeologists, of course, have different perfectly reasonable explanations for all this stuff, but ancient astronaut enthusiasts aren't convinced. Instead, they argue that gaps in our historical records and the mysteries we can't explain must be the work of extraterrestrials. So, how about we hear them out? The most famous proponent of ancient astronauts was Erich von Däniken, the author of the pseudo-scientific book, Chariots of the Gods. He popularized the theory that many ancient deities were actually aliens. He even suggested that those extraterrestrials were light-skinned and Aryan in appearance. Uh-oh. At the same time, the notion of ancient aliens didn't start with von Däniken. It traces back to the late 19th and early 20th centuries. Early sci-fi novels like Edison's Conquest of Mars and the works of H.P. Lovecraft first toyed with the idea. The concept took off in the 1950s, gained even more traction during the space race in the 60s, and became a worldwide phenomenon. And even though many critics discredited von Däniken's work by the 70s, his influence was strong in fringe circles. Surprisingly, scientists today agree that the idea of ancient astronauts isn't impossible, but they add that it's definitely unnecessary. The so-called mysteries of history can all be explained through science, archaeology, and good old human ingenuity. No aliens required. But ancient astronaut believers often point to religious texts, suggesting that myths about gods descending from the heavens are actually tales of aliens arriving on Earth. Take, for example, the Sumerian myth of the Anunnaki. Some people interpret it as aliens coming to our planet to mine gold and creating humans as their slaves. In Hindu mythology, there are flying vehicles called vimanas, which believers say are actually ancient spaceships. Now let's finally figure it out. Did aliens visit ancient humans? Well, some people think so, and they believe the Bible might actually have proof. For example, in the Bible's book of Genesis, there's a story about the sons of God marrying the daughters of humans. Their kids were called the Nephilim giants who roamed the planet. Some Christians think these sons of God were just different families of Adam and Eve's kids. But others, as well as ancient astronaut theorists, argue that those were actually aliens who mated with humans, creating half-human, half-alien hybrids. The King James Version of the Bible even translates Nephilim as giants. In the Book of Enoch, which adds more detail to Genesis, it says that 200 angels, known as the Watchers, came to Earth, bred with humans, and taught them all sorts of things like metallurgy, magic, and astrology. Those angels, disobeying God, were eventually locked up, and God sent a flood, aka the story of Noah's Ark, to wipe out the Nephilim and the humans who had learned forbidden knowledge. Ancient astronaut believers think that this story is about aliens who were supposed to simply observe humans but broke the rules and got involved, and their offspring are the very Nephilim half-alien giants. Some also say that modern UFOs carry those fallen angels or their descendants still roaming our planet today. Let's move on. In the book of Ezekiel, the prophet described a wild vision of a huge fiery cloud with strange creatures and wheels sparkling like gems. Those beings had 4 faces, wings, and shiny bronze legs. The wheels with the help of which they moved were full of eyes and could go in any direction without turning. Sounds pretty sci-fi, huh? Ancient astronaut theorists believe Ezekiel described a spaceship, possibly piloted by extraterrestrial beings. This idea has been floating around, pun intended, since the 1950s. Some theorists also claim that the Ark of the Covenant, the sacred chest that held the 10 Commandments, was some kind of advanced alien technology. The same goes for other biblical objects like the Urim and Thummim used for divine communication. In the 1960s, some authors suggested that many biblical events, including miracles, were really alien tech at work. Even more shockingly, Barry Downing, a Presbyterian minister, even argued that Jesus himself was an extraterrestrial. He pointed to certain verses where Jesus said, "I am from above." The minister believed that it could have been the proof that Jesus had been an alien visitor. Some proponents also suggested that the biblical idea of hell could actually be the description of the planet Venus. The theory goes that ancient aliens might have shown early humans photos of Venus's fiery, inhospitable surface, and that inspired the idea of hell. They also claim that God and Satan were alien beings who disagreed on whether humans should be given forbidden knowledge. Others compare this to the Greek myth of Prometheus, the hero who gave humans the knowledge of fire. Some even say that the original sin in the Bible, when Adam and Eve disobeyed God, was actually about alien offspring mixing with early humans. But hold on, there's even a claim that the Book of Invasions from Irish mythology, which talks about the arrival of the Tuatha De Danann, is actually about aliens arriving in Ireland. According to the legend, they came in dark clouds and caused the sun to disappear for 3 days. Ancient astronaut theorists think this could be a reference to spaceships with cloaking devices. Now, some people think that ancient artwork is full of clues that aliens visited Earth a long time ago. Let's dive deeper into the details. Ancient astronaut believers point to cave drawings, especially those from the Hopi and Zuni tribes, that show Kachina's certain spirit beings and say they might actually represent star people, which means extraterrestrials. They argue that similar drawings found around the world are proof that aliens visited many different ancient civilizations. There are also examples from places like Australia and Italy, drawings there look a lot like astronauts with dome-shaped helmets. Some people think those cave pictures show early humans encountering aliens wearing spacesuits. Another source of potential evidence comes from medieval and Renaissance paintings. Ancient astronaut fans claim that many artworks from this time show UFOs. For instance, in Madonna and Child with the Infant St. John, there's an odd object in the sky that people say looks like a flying saucer. You'll find more in other famous paintings like The Annunciation by Carlo Crivelli, Holy Trinity by Bonaventura Salimbeni, and Miracle of the Snow by Masolino da Panicale. However, experts like Italian art historian Diego Cuoghi argue that these objects aren't UFOs whatsoever. They symbolize religious ideas like angels, radiant clouds, and others. One of the most popular ancient astronaut claims is based on the Nazca lines in Peru. These huge ground drawings, depicting animals and geometric shapes, can only be fully seen from high above. Some think they were created according to instructions from aliens, or that the long lines might even have been runways for their spaceships. At the same time, archaeologists say there's no proof of this. They think the lines were actually used for ancient ceremonial purposes. One researcher even recreated a figure using just simple tools to show how they could have been made by the Nazca people themselves. But wait, there's more to consider. Some artifacts like the Saqqara bird from Egypt and the Quimbaya artifacts from Colombia, Ecuador, are said to look like modern planes or gliders. Ancient astronaut believers think these might have been models of alien spacecraft, even though mainstream archaeologists are sure that they're just stylized representations of birds and insects. Then how about sites like the Pyramids of Giza, Machu Picchu in Peru, Baalbek in Lebanon, Stonehenge in England, and the Moai statues on Easter Island? They often get linked to the idea of aliens. These structures are so massive and precisely built that humans of the time couldn't have made them without help from extraterrestrials. Mainstream archaeologists don't agree and say ancient people had the skills and manpower to move even huge stones. There have been experiments showing that large megaliths can be transported using simple ancient technologies. And still, some believers argue that the sudden rise of ancient Egypt's advanced civilization, and especially the construction of the pyramids and the Sphinx, was due to extraterrestrial influence. Now look at these massive Moai statues on Easter Island. They have puzzled people for a long time. Some ancient astronaut believers say there's no way humans could have moved such heavy structures without using alien technology. But in the 1980s, a group of researchers figured out a method that involved using ropes that made the statues walk across the landscape with the help of just a small team of people. But how will you explain this fact? Some ancient cultures, including the Egyptians and some Native Americans, used to artificially lengthen the skulls of their children. Ancient astronaut believers think they did this to mimic the appearance of extraterrestrials, whom that they might have seen as deities. Pharaoh Akhenaten and his family, who are often depicted with elongated heads and other unusual features, have also sparked theories of alien influence. Scientists believe that such features were probably caused by a genetic disorder due to inbreeding, which was common in royal families. Akhenaten was known for worshipping the sun god Aten, and some suggest his focus on the sun could be tied to a disease that sunlight helped relieve. Now let's get one thing straight. Mainstream scientists and archaeologists are not buying ancient astronaut theories. They call this whole thing pseudoscience, arguing that such wild claims often twist, misinterpret, or even outright fake evidence. The Pentagon has recently released a report, and according to the New York Times, they haven't found any evidence of aliens, spaceships, or visits from extraterrestrials. Last summer, a former U.S. intelligence officer named David Grush claimed at a congressional hearing that the U.S. might have been hiding secret programs for decades to detect and study aliens and their tech. He even said the U.S. had pieces of alien spaceships and even actual alien remains. However, the 63-page report put together by the U.S. Department of Defense's Anomaly Resolution Office says that since the 1960s, people have been confusing American spy planes and drones with UFOs, or what they now call unidentified anomalous phenomena. Pentagon spokesperson Patrick Ryder said they were keeping an open mind, but found no proof of aliens or hidden government programs. He mentioned that most sightings were just normal objects or misidentifications. In February last year, after a few unidentified flying objects were shot down over the US and Canada, an interagency group was created to look into the whole UFO situation. At the time, John Kirby from the National Security Council noted that this phenomenon had been around for a long time, but previous administrations hadn't really tried to explain it. Now, why is the ancient astronaut theory so popular? The human brain needs an easy way to explain incomprehensible things, and blaming them on some extraterrestrial powers is a simple way to do it. The supporters of the theory often take fragments out of historical and cultural contexts, ignoring the broader meaning of those pieces. Plus, they assume that alien technologies must be similar to ours, and that aliens must be interested in the same things as humans, which would be very unlikely even if aliens existed. The ancient astronaut theory, despite its popularity in certain circles, is classified by the scientific community as pseudoscience since it does not comply with the principles of the scientific method and is often based on distortion of facts or false analogies. At the same time, come to think of it, the universe is unimaginably huge. Does it really sound possible that in the vast, constantly expanding cosmos, we're the only intelligent, technologically advanced civilization? What do you think? Write your opinion in the comments.
The James Webb Telescope, or JWST, is like the ultimate intergalactic paparazzi. It takes pictures of some of the most famous celebrities in the universe. Stars, galaxies, exoplanets, you name it. The James Webb Space Telescope will snap a photo. So if you're a fan of cosmic celebrities, let's take a look at some of these best star-studded photos. The Carina Nebula. The image of the nebula with the beautiful name Carina was published on July 12th. JWST captured a beautiful view of the nebula, located about 7,500 light-years from Earth. Nicknamed the Cosmic Cliffs, it is, in fact, a hotbed of young stars, some of which are several times larger than our Sun. The Carina Nebula is a celestial spectacle located in the southern constellation Carina. It's really huge, approximately 260 light-years across. Massive stars within this nebula are so bright and hot that they create a glowing cloud of gas and dust around them. The Carina Nebula also contains swirling clouds of gas and dust where new stars are being born. The gas collapses under its own weight, becomes hotter and denser, and all this eventually leads to the creation of new stars. However, the Carina Nebula isn't just some peaceful place of star formation. It's the site of some of the most destructive events in the universe, which create massive shockwaves that obliterate everything in their path. Very chaotic and cool. The Stefan's Quintet. This photo was also posted on July 12th. Stefan's Quintet is a visual group of 5 galaxies located at a huge distance from us. About 290 million light-years in the constellation of Pegasus. It's like a cosmic family reunion. All these galaxies are related to each other and interact with each other in some interesting ways. They're pulling and tugging on each other with their gravity, constantly exchanging gas and dust. This interaction is causing some of the galaxies to collide and merge, which can create all sorts of cool effects, like bursts of star formation and supernovae. Thanks to JWST, we were able to see shockwaves, tidal tails, and other amazing details about these galaxies. Their interactions create a stunning sight that we can see in this photo. Jupiter. And here's our old giant friend. This image was published by NASA on August 22nd. Jupiter is the largest planet in our solar system, and it's known for its many moons and its beautiful swirling clouds. But it also has a system of rings, just like Saturn, which are made up of tiny particles of dust that orbit the planet. These rings are much smaller and less visible than Saturn's, but they're still pretty neat. Jupiter also has auroras, which are colorful light displays that occur in the planet's atmosphere. They're caused by charged particles from the solar wind interacting with Jupiter's magnetic field. Just like on Earth, they can be seen near the poles of the planet. But these auroras are much brighter and more intense than ours. We can even see this crazy light show from space. And now, we were finally able to capture this dazzling sight. JWST's photo shows the auroras of Jupiter, its rings, and even two moons, Amalthea and Adrastea. It's amazing how bright and clear they are on this photo. The Cartwheel Galaxy. NASA released this image on August 2nd. This photo shows us the Cartwheel Galaxy and its companions. The Cartwheel Galaxy gets its name from its shape. It kind of looks like a cartwheel, doesn't it? This is a giant swirling mass of stars, gas, and dust, which is located in the depths of space. It's shaped like a pinwheel with long spiral arms. These arms are held together by the gravity of the central region, which is home to a supermassive black hole. But the Cartwheel Galaxy is a bit different from its spiral relatives. It has formed when a smaller galaxy collided with a larger one, creating a shockwave that rippled through the gas and dust. We'll definitely have to visit this galaxy someday. It's sure to be a wild ride. Spiral Galaxy M74. And here comes another spiral galaxy. NASA released this image on July 22nd. JWST had to peer through thick layers of dust and gas to see this beautiful star cluster. M74 belongs to a special class of spiral galaxies known as the Grand Design Galaxy. This means that its spiral arms are noticeable and clearly outlined. All sorts of amazing things are happening inside of spiral galaxies. Supernovas, stars being born in clouds of gas and dust, and many other cosmic wonders. The glowing gas and dust, the bright stars, and the swirling patterns of the spiral arms make them some of the most striking objects in the universe. Well, we can clearly see it on the example of M74. The Tarantula Nebula. This image of the nebula with a creepy name Tarantula was published on September 6th. The photo covers as much as 340 light-years across. This is a huge distance. Thanks to this image, astronomers have discovered new young stars that were previously shrouded in dust. The Tarantula Nebula is located 160,000 light-years away from us, in the Large Magellanic Cloud. It's the largest and brightest star-forming region in the local group, the galaxies nearest our Milky Way. It's named after its shape, which looks like a bit like the legs of a big tarantula. It's a vast region of space, about 1,000 light-years across, and it's home to some of the most massive and luminous stars in the universe. One of the reasons why the Tarantula Nebula is interesting to scientists is its composition. Its composition is close to the region of stars of the cosmic noon, the so-called state of our universe when it was only a few billion years old. At that time, star formation was at its peak. Thanks to the Webb telescope, we can study this galaxy better and find out what our universe was like at its peak. Neptune's rings. This photo was published on September 21st, 2022. In this photo, we can even see 6 small moons next to the planet, with Triton shining brightly in the upper left corner. You didn't think it was the sun, did you? And yep, Neptune has rings too. They're like the ultimate cosmic accessory. They add a touch of glamour and style to the planet. But unlike some earthly bling, these rings are made of small particles of dust rather than diamonds and gold. There are 5 known rings around Neptune: the Gall, Leverrier, Lassell, Arago, and Adam's rings. Scientists think that these are relatively young, much younger than our solar system and much younger than, for example, Uranus's rings. They were probably created when one of Neptune's inner moons got too close to the planet and was torn apart by gravity. We haven't seen Neptune's rings so brightly since Voyager 2 flew past it back in 1989. So this is a great opportunity to take a closer look at these rings. The Pillars of Creation. This photo was published on October 19th. The Pillars of Creation became famous thanks to the Hubble telescope, but this photo is very lush and much more detailed. These columns, located in the Eagle Nebula, are about 5 light-years tall, which is really, really long. And they look like some majestic rock formations, only much more transparent. Just like a typical Hollywood movie set, they're full of action and special effects. They're home to some of the most dramatic processes in the universe. The gas and dust are collapsing under their own gravity, forming clumps that will eventually become stars. The place is full of intense radiation, jets of high-energy particles, and supernovae. It's like a cosmic version of Survivor. And if this wasn't creepy enough, here's another photo published by NASA on October 19th. They shared it right before Halloween. Here, the pillars resemble an eerie hand reaching for something. Brrr. Anyway, all these photos give us a truly awe-inspiring sight. They remind us of the incredible complexity of the universe and the amazing things that are happening even in the darkest and most remote corners of the cosmos. Let's hope that the James Webb Telescope will continue to amaze us in the future.
It's been more than a year since the James Webb Telescope, which had taken over 20 years to complete, was launched. And for such a relatively short time, the ultra-modern and most powerful in history piece of equipment has already made plenty of discoveries. By observing the universe at infrared wavelength, James Webb lets us see things no other telescope has ever shown before. The primary goal of this incredible piece of equipment is to study the formation of galaxies and stars that appeared in the early universe. For example, look at the closest to us stellar nursery, a region of space where new stars get born. NASA has shared an image from James Webb that shows a small star-forming region. If you look at the picture attentively, you'll see jets bursting from infant stars. Around them, different colored clouds of cosmic dust are colliding with one another. The view is mesmerizing. The red dust consists of molecular hydrogen. You can also notice that some stars have something like shadows. Those hint at the creation of what will later become planets. At first sight, the image may seem chaotic, but astronomers claim that it's a relatively small and quiet stellar nursery in comparison to some others. Many young stars there are similar in size to our Sun or a bit smaller. The photo itself was taken with the help of Webb's near-infrared camera, NIRCam. It's the observatory's primary camera that snaps images of the cosmos in 2 different infrared ranges. Another amazing discovery the Webb telescope has made is smoke molecules in a distant galaxy. It's the first time such molecules have been discovered so far away from our planet. The galaxy in question lies 12.3 billion light-years away from Earth. It most likely formed about 1.5 billion years after the Big Bang. Despite such a huge distance between the galaxy and our planet, scientists have managed to detect chemical compounds found in soot or smoke. And it's quite a big deal, since it has pushed the record for detecting similar, complex molecules back by around 1 billion years. This study has also confirmed the sheer power of the coolest piece of space equipment of all time. It managed to make this discovery despite the fact that the spectrometer needed for the measurements didn't perform to the fullest after having experienced a sudden and surprising degradation. The James Webb Telescope has also helped to boost our understanding of exoplanets. Those are planets orbiting stars other than our own Sun. At the beginning of 2023, the observatory spotted its first exoplanet, Chess 475b. It's located 41 light-years away from Earth and is approximately the same size as our planet. According to NASA, nowadays, James Webb is the only operating telescope capable of categorizing the atmosphere of Earth-sized exoplanets. The research team behind the discovery believes such results underline the precision of the telescope. They hope that it will help us locate many more rocky exoplanets that we might be able to colonize in the future. Even though, at first sight, it may seem that the universe is pretty empty, it's actually a very busy place. And Webb has all the necessary instruments to see all kinds of cosmic events happening out there. Just look at this image of WR124. It's a star on the cusp of its explosive demise. In the image, the star is about to go supernova. It happens when a star runs out of its fuel and explodes at the end of its life cycle, releasing a giant cloud of space dust and hot gas into space. The star captured by the Webb telescope was at the Wolf-Rayet stage of its life. That's a period when a star is shedding its outer layers before going supernova. The next amazing thing discovered by James Webb is a star-planet hybrid with very strange clouds. This bizarre world, VS1256b, is actually a brown dwarf. Those are bigger than planets but too small to classify as stars. They emit some light of their own and are quite hot, but their mass is simply not enough to fuse hydrogen into helium, like full-fledged stars do. Space bodies of this kind aren't actually brown. They occur in a wide variety of colors, but those are mostly invisible to the human eye. What we can see is the light they emit, and to us, it appears to be dark orange or magenta. The brown dwarf discovered by the Webb telescope is almost 20 times the size of Jupiter. It orbits 2 red dwarf stars, and to complete one orbit, it needs over 10,000 years. Astronomers first found out about this unusual exoplanet in 2016, but at that time, they didn't classify it as a brown dwarf, and thus couldn't explain its puzzling reddish glow. Now, thanks to the James Webb telescope, they know the space object's origin. Anyway, back to those clouds. As you know, clouds on Earth are made of water vapor, but those on the brown dwarf are different. They seem to be made of sand. It looks like good old sand from Earth, but it's actually not. The clouds are made of tiny particles of silicate. Another recent discovery involves several large galaxies that scientists believe were born not long after the Big Bang. They aren't supposed to be there, and no one expected to find them, but the James Webb Space Telescope has spotted them. These galaxies, as massive as our home Milky Way, are full of mature red stars. Astronomers have analyzed the light coming from them and estimated their age. 500 to 700 million years after the Big Bang. It means that they came into being when our universe was very young, almost a baby. But the most bizarre thing about these galaxies is their tremendous size and the age of the stars dwelling there. The data received by the telescope don't coincide with the existing ideas about what the universe looked like and how it evolved in its early years. It also doesn't match the earlier observations made by Hubble. And here, James Webb has captured a distant region of space in unprecedented detail. This section of space is known as Pandora's cluster. In the image, you can see 3 massive clusters of galaxies coming together and forming a megacluster. The combined mass of these clusters acts as a powerful gravitational lens, and thanks to this natural magnification effect, scientists can see other galaxies in the region. Astronomers claim that the most recent image of Pandora's cluster is stronger and deeper than they have ever seen. James Webb has also managed to spot thousands of young stars never seen before in the Tarantula Nebula. This space formation got its nickname because of the appearance of dusty filaments spotted in previous images. It's the biggest star-forming region in the local group, which includes the galaxies nearest to the Milky Way. The Webb telescope's images have helped to shed light on the composition of the Tarantula Nebula. The telescope has also detected protostars, infant stars in the process of gaining mass. Astronomers expect that these protostars will eventually form and shape the nebula further. Among other discoveries made by the James Webb Telescope, you can see the birth of 50 distant stars. Some of them power protoplanetary disks, which might later form solar systems, light years away from our own. Here is one more image from James Webb. You can see a supermassive black hole that has a mass of 9 billion suns. It's so ginormous and ancient that scientists are struggling to explain its existence. Astronomers have also discovered a distant ring of dust, rock, and gas that contains a chemical called methylcation. It's known as a molecular building block of life, and it makes most of the organic material on our planet. James Webb helped researchers see powerful sandstorms on a planet 378 trillion kilometers away. Astronomers were happy to discover this treasure chest of countless tiny sand particles. Now look at this. Do you recognize this image? Those are the so-called pillars of creation, but this new view shows us just how star-speckled that dusty region actually is. You can compare the new photo with the one taken by Hubble in 2014. This is astonishing proof of scientific progress.
The oldest black holes we've ever seen, a measurement of distant starlight that threatens to bring the standards of cosmology crashing down, and even a preview of our solar system's gory demise. All these discoveries were made by the James Webb Space Telescope in 2023. Let's find out more about these and other stunning findings of the powerful space instrument. Soon after coming online in 2022, James Webb discovered 6 ginormous galaxies containing almost as many stars as the Milky Way. They dated a mere 500 million years after the Big Bang. It put into doubt our current understanding of the universe, pointing to a deepening mystery of how giant galaxies first appeared in the universe. After having conducted a few simulations, though, some astronomers now claim that the galaxies might not be so ancient. They could just be glowing unusually brightly. James Webb has also found the oldest black hole in the universe and did it twice. The first one, called Sears 1019, had a mass 10 million times that of the Sun. It was found by the telescope a mere 570 million years after the Big Bang. But James Webb didn't rest on its laurels. It discovered an even older, massive black hole. It appeared 440 million years after the beginning of the universe. How these enormous space-time raptures grew to such gigantic scale so early on is a baffling mystery. At the moment, astronomers are considering the idea of black holes forming from the rapid collapse of giant clouds of gas. At the same time, some black holes could have been seeded by hypothesized primordial black holes. Those are believed to have been created mere moments after the universe began. The Webb telescope has also cast doubt on the standard model of cosmology. You see, the universe is expanding, but it's doing so at different rates, depending on where we look. In the past, the 2 best experiments measuring the expansion rate showed different results. Cosmologists thought it could be due to some uncertainties in the work of the Hubble Space Telescope. But James Webb snuffed out that hope, providing researchers with yet another speed of expansion. One more astonishing discovery was dozens of unexplainable rogue objects floating through space in pairs. Those are couples of Jupiter-sized space bodies. Some of them were spotted as far apart from each other as 390 times the distance between Earth and the Sun. These objects are too small to be stars, but they're also unlikely to be rogue planets ejected from their solar systems. Now, this next discovery is even cooler. The JWST has an amazing ability. It can measure a spectrum of the atmospheres of distant exoplanets. This feature allowed it to spot the potential signs of life in a water world located 120 light-years away from Earth. This exoplanet is a sub-Neptune planet, weighing somewhere between the mass of Earth and Neptune. It orbits in the habitable zone of a red dwarf star. After examining its atmosphere, James Webb discovered that it was rich in hydrogen, methane, and carbon dioxide. These are chemical markers of a hydrogen-rich world that is likely to host extraterrestrial life. Now, stars and galaxies aren't spread through the universe evenly. They're connected by an enormous cosmic web. You can think of it as a network of crisscrossing celestial superhighways paved with hydrogen gas and dark matter. And the James Webb Telescope spotted the earliest strands of this web ever seen. It was a gassy tendril made of 10 closely packed galaxies spanning more than 3 million light-years in length. It formed when the universe was just 830 million years old. The tendril is partially wrapped around a bright black hole. Another phenomenon on James Webb's list of space distance records was the most distant gravitationally lensed object. It's an Einstein ring, produced by the warping of light from a distant galaxy around a mysterious dense foreground galaxy. How distant is it, you may ask? 21 billion light-years away. That's how. And given the universe is only 13.8 billion years of age, the light from the galaxy has traveled almost twice that distance due to the expansion of space. And finally, James Webb has zoomed in on a gory preview of the sun's distant future. This ring-shaped space object is Ring Nebula, 2,200 light-years remains of an exploded star. At its center, there's a tiny white dwarf, the last remaining piece of the star's core, left after it exploded outward. The explosion most likely destroyed or ejected all unfortunate planets in its way. A similar fate is likely to befall our own solar system in 5 billion years.